Welcome to the Roy Morgan Weekly Update, and today we have the latest results from a special survey on views of Australians about Australia Day. But first, our weekly indicators. So the third Roy Morgan survey of the year shows support for the government increasing for a second straight week. Support for the Labor government increased 1% to 52.5% and is now clearly ahead of the coalition on 47.5% on a two-party preferred basis. This is marginally better than the last election and would result in a slightly increased Labor majority. Government confidence has also increased 3.5 points to 85, its highest since mid-September, but still well below 100, the neutral point where equal numbers of people think the country's going in the right direction and the wrong direction. Government confidence is 85 because 50% of Australians say the country's heading in the wrong direction and only 35% say the country's heading in the right direction. ANZ Roy Morgan consumer confidence was unchanged this week at 84.4. Inflation expectations were up slightly this week by 0.2% to 5.2%. and have now been in a narrow band from 5 to 5.3% since mid-December. So Australians now expect annual inflation to be 5.2% over the next 2 years. This is clearly above the official figure of 4.3% for the year to November 2023. The rise in inflation expectations this week is unsurprising given the price of petrol. The average retail prices in Australia have now spent a record 28 weeks, more than 6 months, above $1.80 per litre, although they're trending down in recent weeks. And now turning to the most topical issue of the week, how Australians feel about our national holiday, Australia Day. It's a complicated and contentious issue. For the last 4 years, Roy Morgan has surveyed Australians on this issue by asking the following question. On January 26, 1788, Captain Arthur Phillip landed at Sydney Cove. In your opinion, should January 26 be known as Australia Day or Invasion Day? Following the defeat of the Voice referendum late last year, the latest results show an increase in support for continuing to call January 26 Australia Day. 68.5% of Australians now say January 26 should be known as Australia Day. Only 31.5% say the day should be known as Invasion Day. Australians are more evenly divided on whether the date of Australia Day should be moved. 58.5% say the date should remain the same, while 41.5% say the date should be moved. The real interest in this question comes from diving into the results by different demographics, different kinds of people. So men are far more likely to be in favour of calling January 26 Australia Day than women. Men, 76.5%, women, 61.5%, a difference of 15 percentage points. On the other hand, a slim majority of 50.5% of women say the date of Australia Day should be moved. Only 32.5% of men. That's a difference of 18 points. Australians of all ages say the date should be known as Australia Day, but the result is far more conclusive for older Australians. 82.5% of people aged 65 plus say the date should be known as Australia Day, compared to only 56.5% of people aged 18 to 34. It's worth remembering when thinking about this issue that Australia Day's only been celebrated nationwide on January 26 for less than 30 years. As recently as 1994, the Australia Day public holiday was taken on Monday, January 31, the first Monday after January 26. A look now at business confidence, and we see business confidence for December shows the index recovering from the shock of the Reserve Bank interest rate increase in November. It's up 5.3 points to 91.1. Roy Morgan interviews about 1,500 businesses every month, and business confidence has now spent a record 11 straight months under the neutral level of 100. With inflation falling and the likelihood that there'll be no more interest rate increases, we'd be hoping to see an increase in business confidence during 2024 to well above the levels we saw last year, a record low year for the index. Business confidence in 2023 averaged only 91.8, and that's well below the previous record low of 95.6 that we saw during the pandemic-impacted 2020. Now, unemployment, and what some people are calling the ABS unemployment number wang. Last week, Roy Morgan announced good news on the employment front: more employed and fewer unemployed. Then a day or so later, the ABS unemployment numbers presented a totally different picture. And there was a lot of fuss made last week when the ABS reported a large fall in employment, down by 65,000. However, a look beneath the hood of the figures shows it's all because of seasonal adjustment. The original figures, taken from the labour force survey, show employment increasing by 18,000 for December. So although the survey showed employment increasing in December, once the numbers are seasonally adjusted, they suddenly reverse and fall. A comparison of the two sets of figures showed that all the original figures for employment increased in December. However, only part-time employment increased after being seasonally adjusted. So how can this happen? Well, it's due to the seasonal adjustment process that looks at movements in previous years and uses those historic figures to place the latest figures into a broader context. The problem at the moment is that the seasonal adjustment process is including movements from the pandemic-impacted years of 2020 to 2022. This is a period of time with huge labour force changes on a monthly basis, as lockdowns and government incentives massively distorted the movements into and out of employment and unemployment. So including this pandemic era employment numbers in the seasonal adjustment process is certain to heavily distort the process and undermine the credibility of the seasonally adjusted labour force numbers, and should really be reconsidered as an approach going forward. At Roy Morgan, we simply report the actual unadjusted figures, and we stand by our view that employment was looking good in December, better than November and better than last December. And that's a wrap. Thanks for listening today, and I'll be back next week to bring you the most up-to-date readings on consumer confidence, inflation expectations, voting intentions, including in Australia's two nearest neighbours of Indonesia, soon to face a presidential election, and New Zealand. Thanks for listening.